welcome to episode 70 of the Sports Geek podcast. On this week's podcast, I catch up with Adam Bader from Real Madrid to talk social and digital with one of the biggest sports teams in the world. And with the cricket world, we mourn the passing of Australian Test cricketer Phillip Hughes.
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host who loves working with teams around the world who need sleep, Sean Callanan.
DJ Joel. My name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek, and thank you for listening to the Sports Geek podcast. Starting off the podcast on a very somber note, recording this one day after the passing of Phillip Hughes, Australian Test cricketer that was felled by a bouncer playing the game that he loved, and unfortunately a freak accident caused him to lose his life only hours before being reselected into the Australian Test team. So I know I spoke with Finn Bradshaw and the team at Cricket Australia. My heart and prayers go out to them. I think they've done a remarkable job in covering the tragedy and helping the Australian public grieve. I think one of the power of social and digital is it is very powerful to show the support. So the support that goes out to Phillip Hughes' family via social, via all the tweets and Instagram posts and Facebook posts that have been going out. I know my feed has been filled with tributes from both fans and players alike. And, you know, on a special note, I want to really put not a shout out, so to speak, but my thoughts and prayers with my friends at the SCG, Karen Lefevre and Jane, and all the guys and girls working at Cricket New South Wales, where Phillip started his cricketing career. I know you guys are hurting, and I know you're also providing a lot of support to a young man that unfortunately bowled the ball and that caused Phillip's injuries. And Sean Abbott, lucky enough to do a little bit of work with Sean when he was when we were working at the Thunder in the Big Bash League. I can only imagine how he is feeling. So I hope he gets, and I know he will get, the support from Cricket New South Wales and Cricket Australia, and he's got the support of the whole cricketing world. So very sad day for everyone in cricket. You never like to see anybody lose their life in doing what they love and at work, but to do it in such a public way was terribly saddening. So moving on from that, and I will put a link in the show notes, which effectively is the social media post of the week, but there's no joy in awarding it or doing it. But again, I think the cricket.com.au folk and Finn and his team did a great job in respecting the Hughes family, but then also allowing the cricket faithful to rally their support behind Phillip. So if you haven't seen some of the tributes and posts and articles that are coming out of the site, I suggest you do check them out. Other news this week, I want to just have a quick thank you to everyone who turned up to the Entrepreneur Club on Tuesday. It was a great night, getting to tell the Sports Geek story with other entrepreneurs on how you can build your business. And I guess one tip coming out of it, the Entrepreneurs Club is born out of meetup.com. And for me, and I've been talking this a little bit more on Beers, Blokes and Business podcast, but meetup.com is a really powerful, it's almost an underground social network for networking events. And if a lot of people who turn up to these events are pretty much just looking to meet like-minded people and connect and network for their business. But I do think it's underutilized in the world of sports, not only just from a networking point of view, but also potentially from a sports team and a sports networking point of view. So again, if you're looking to get your fans together, especially rally those online fans, the ones that are quite savvy in the online space, investigate playing around with setting up a meetup group, helping your fans congregate either before games or after games or even midweek. Really good way to build up a little bit of a focus group. I'm actually toying around with moving the sports business nights that I regularly run and people like Russell Scabetti run, is moving them into that meetup.com space because it's built for that, and it definitely helps with the real locational type of networking and you want to really connect with your market, meetup.com is a really good way to do that. I want to jump into the interview. It's a quite long interview with Adam Bader. I want to say thank you to Oscar Ugaz, who was Adam's former boss at Real Madrid. Adam was kind enough to send me an email to say I can do an interview now for the podcast. So we sat down I think it was about 7 days ago, about 7 to 10 days ago. Had a really good chat about his journey and how he got into Real Madrid, what he did, and some of those early days, and some of the things that they've learnt along the way. Just like all of us, it's just in a bigger scale. So here is my interview with Adam Bader from Real Madrid on the Sports Geek podcast. Very happy to welcome a man that I was chasing down on my recent Euro Sports Geek trip. Weren't able to catch up, but now I've got hold of him via Skype. Adam Bader, the former social media manager for Real Madrid. Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast.
Thanks, Sean. I'm really glad to be on the podcast finally.
Well, thank you very much. As I said, we tried to connect and we couldn't get our schedules to connect when I was in Spain. I was lucky enough to see Real Madrid in action in the stadium and, had a amazing experience. It's nothing like seeing it live. Do you want to give us a little bit of background in your time at Real Madrid, how you got started, and then how you got into the role of social media manager?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Adam Bader. I was born in Libya. I grew up there, and my dad was a football player. So it's the typical story. I wanted to be a football player as well. I played football, and then I had to quit because I had to work at an early age, and then I wanted to start, continue in the football industry. I wanted to do something different, and so I tried to study journalism, but there weren't any options available in the area where I was living. So I thought I would get into blogging because that was the closest thing. So I started a blog about Real Madrid in 2006. That blog became really popular quickly because the majority of Real Madrid blogs were in Spanish. There were like a couple of blogs in English. So the blog was called Real Madrid Talk. And, at that time I was interested in internet marketing, digital and all of that stuff. I had other websites and I was making a living online. So with my internet marketing background, I could get the blog on the Google search page, the first page, and I knew how to get traffic into it. So it grew very quickly. Twitter came along. I signed up for Twitter. I grew a fan base there, and then Real Madrid signed up for Twitter. They noticed that I had more followers than them, so they sent me a direct message. I still remember that day. Yep. And I was like, hey, we love what you're doing. We want to talk to you. And I was like, this has to be scam. That can't be true. So It took me like a little while to believe it. But then I got in touch with them. It was Oscar Ugaz, the person that you interviewed on the podcast previously. Yep. He was the digital business manager at the club. That was in 2009. I was living in Italy at the time. A year before that, I sold the blog to a company called Ole Ole, which was a football startup it was like Facebook, yep, but for football fans. So There's one called Sports Lobster now, which is very similar. So they bought the blog, and then I continued to blog for them. And then, so I came to Madrid. I did the tour. They gave me a shirt with my name on it. Oscar was very nice. And we kept in touch. And then we started talking like almost every day about football, Real Madrid, and digital. And so I was giving him some, feedback and ideas about stuff that the club should be doing from a fan perspective. And he started trying these ideas out, and he started listening to me more. And it came to a point where he said, your ideas work better than the agency's ideas. He had an agency doing social media for the club. They only had a Twitter account, a YouTube channel, and a Facebook page. And they had like 4 million fans. So they were not they were getting into it. So he said, okay, why let's do this. I'm going to end the contract with the agency, and I'm going to hire you as a freelance. And so we did that, and I started, doing more things, having more responsibility. And then it came to a point where I was like, okay, I'm going to move to Madrid because I'm blogging, I'm working with the club as a freelance, so it would be better if I was closer. So in 2010, I moved to Madrid, and I continued to do this job. And then at some point, they decided to give me a contract, and I joined the club, officially. That was in 2011, and I left a week ago. So I spent almost, I don't know, maybe 4 years there. In total, yeah, it would be 4 years.
And 4 years, I think I've said it before on the podcast. In internet years, that's like 7 years, 7 or 8 years. Internet years are far longer. We were talking prior to starting, and you sort of commenting that it felt like 4 years, but it was more like 40 because of the amount of changes and the amount of things that have grown and popped up since that time. So you've come into Real Madrid and in an official capacity. You're already doing that, that content, what is now called content marketing, and what it used to be termed blogging, with your own blog and writing it. And it's a very common way to get into a club, especially in that time period of it's better to go get the people that are doing it, whether it be blogging and using the platforms to come into the role, because at that stage there was a lot of people that didn't know how to use the platforms. And it's much better to go and recruit someone that is already, what I would call a digital native, that are using all of those platforms, and not having any concerns to be out there using them and testing them. And I guess that would have given you a lot of advantages coming in, because you would have tested how to promote your blog with your Twitter handles and the ones associated with the blog, so you can test these things, and you would have just transferred those skills and tactics and techniques for all things Real Madrid.
I think maybe Oscar has the best answer, because he's the person who got in touch with me. But I think the reason he gave me this opportunity, it was actually my first real job, apart from working for my dad, if you consider that as a real job.
Yep.
It was my first real job because I had my internet business. So I didn't have the business skills that any, like any school graduate would have, like somebody who has a BA or an MA. I actually quit school to come to Madrid. I quit my job at my dad's shop. I sold the blog and I stopped blogging, so there wouldn't be a conflict of interest. I quit university. I was doing a BA in linguistics. I still had to finish that. And I left everything in 1 week, and I came to Madrid. And I knew it was almost impossible to work for Real Madrid, like to get a contract.
Yep.
Because of the kind of company it is. It's not like a normal company. It's a different organization. So, but I said, okay, you know what? I wasn't happy living in Libya, and I wanted to live in Europe. It was like, I'm not going to have anything to lose, right? Exactly. So I went there. So I think the thing that attracted Oscar was the fact that I had all the ingredients to be like, I was there at the right time and at the right place, because I was a Real Madrid fan. I was into digital. Mm-hmm. When I came to Madrid, I worked for Real Madrid TV for a year. And so I had a very good background. Like, I had all the ingredients. And then he said, okay, you speak English, Italian, and Arabic. They were getting into the Arabic market. That was important for him. And then he said, Real Madrid inside out, because I had been blogging about, like, I'm a big Real Madrid fan, so I know the club inside out. And also I worked at Real Madrid TV, so I knew the people in the industry, I knew the culture, I knew the politics, so I was a very good candidate. But yeah, blogging was like, when I was growing up, I never thought that I would, end up there. I thought about working for Real Madrid, but it was like impossible. Because where I come from, because of the difficulties I had, it was not like something that is possible. But then, it happened. And it happened thanks to the internet, thanks to Twitter. It's my favorite social network because the ROI that I get from Twitter is amazing in terms of connecting with people. Like connected with a lot of people that ended in 2 jobs, in becoming friends with people that I would have never met in real life. So yeah, I think blogging is, if anybody is listening now and they want to get into a football club, their favorite football club, you have to be creative and you have to think outside of the box and do some things that other people wouldn't want to do, So that could be, doing a podcast, doing a YouTube show about the club, or, blogging. So yeah, it was for me, it worked, it's a very effective strategy.
Well, the thing is, these days all teams are looking for exceptional content and innovative ways to push that content out. So if you're a listener and you want to get into a club or a team or a league in work in that space, you've got to work those platforms and know them inside out. So you can offer that skill to that team. So if you're looking at, emerging platforms, if we look at things like Vine and things like that, there are people that are learning those platforms inside out. And if that is a skill then that a team is looking for, to say, we're going to now go on Vine, we don't quite know how this platform works, or it might be other ones like Snapchat, those kind of things. That's the advantage that people, up and comers have. If you go and learn that platform from its ins and outs, then you've got that skill set that might be something that is desired. So I'm a big fan, a big believer in, you've got to use the tools yourself in all the network, in your actual life, so you can test it, because you don't want to go and start testing. Wonder how this will work on a Twitter account that has, in Real Madrid's case, 13.5 million followers. You want to be testing this stuff on your own platforms with your friends, with your colleagues. So then you can apply those same tactics when you get to the big stage.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned that, because when the club signed up for Twitter, I had already been there. I was an early adopter. I think I signed up in 2007 or 8. I don't remember exactly. But the reason they were not growing as fast as they should was because of a bug in the platform. And it was in the problem was with the search engine, because the name of the account was Real Madrid, one word.
Yep.
And people were searching for Real Madrid, two separate words, Real Madrid. And when you do that, my account, which was called Real Madrid Talk, would show up first. So I told Oscar to change that, and he laughed at me and he said, "It can't be that easy." He's like, "Seriously, do that." And once he did that, after like a week or so, the search engine caught up and they became first. I was second, and then they started growing by 1,000 followers a day, which at that time was like a big deal, because Twitter wasn't growing as fast as it is now. So as you said, you have to experiment, and it's better to do it not on the official account. So I use my blog, like while working for the club, I use my Twitter account, the blog, for, experimentation and all of that stuff. And it was really useful.
So take us into your role as social media manager. What was your day-to-day like? What type of what departments were you constantly? One of the things that we're always challenged with working with digital teams is the push and pull that is the social media platforms, because you'll have the commercial guys with sponsors, being attracted by the big numbers, the likes and the follows, and say, we want to push out offers, and trying to balance that with the content team wanting to push out their content, as well as engaging the fans and recognizing the fans. How did you manage that balance and those demands from the different departments?
Yeah, so I worked in 4 departments, because like social media or digital in general for football clubs is still a new thing. They don't know how to deal with it. They don't know where those guys, like the community managers, for example, where they should be. So I started marketing with Oscar. Then I was moved to communication. Oscar left. And then I was moved to IT.
Yep.
And then we were moved last February to a new department called digital. And the main problem was trying to make everybody happy across the club, because we were providing a service for everybody. So we're providing a service for the communication department, for the marketing department, for the sponsorship department, for the ticketing department. And sometimes it's hard to make everybody happy because they don't have the same goals.
Yep.
So it was a challenge, but we made it work. The biggest challenge at that time was when I came on board. People didn't take social media seriously. It was not something that they were willing to invest in. So I was alone. I was doing all the accounts. I was doing all the work. So we didn't have a lot of resources. But then by proving that this is going to be big, and showing them case studies of, singers and actors. And obviously, these things where this problem existed in other industries as well. But because of celebrities adopting social networks, the club started to see that this is not just like a fad or something. It's going to be a really big thing. So they started thinking about it seriously.
Yep.
So we started. My job was to become, I don't know if it's the accurate word, but it would be like an evangelist.
Yep.
Trying to convince everybody that we should take this seriously and start building up our social media presence. So we started. The first thing that I did was I separated the Spanish account. In the Spanish account, the main account at Real Madrid, we were tweeting in Spanish and English, which was absurd. So we made another English account, and then we create another one Arabic, and then we create another one Japanese. So we started to talk to people in their own language. Even though the Arabic speakers, most of them understood English,
mm-hmm.
they felt closer to the club when we spoke to them in Arabic. Actually, they were freaked out, which was pretty cool. So our strategy was to expand in terms of languages, but also try to give people what they want by asking them. And I did that from my blog because I'm a Real Madrid fan. I know what fans want. And what they want is behind the scenes stuff that they can't see elsewhere, which makes sense. But also they wanted to be heard,
mm-hmm.
and they wanted to be talked to. They wanted to feel that the club cares about them, and the club, whenever I replied to somebody from the official account, they would freak out for a few hours.
Yeah.
I would read the timeline, it's oh my God, Real Madrid talked to me just now. So our strategy was based on that, but it was really hard to execute it very well because because Real Madrid is a big club, and if you make a small mistake, it's going to be a big problem. So
yep.
In terms of interacting with fans, it was really hard because 70% or 80% of the questions we get is about things that we can't talk about. So that would be transfer rumors, injuries, or controversial topics.
Yeah, and it does get very hard at that scale. I've spoken to Richard Clark, managing editor of Arsenal, and he said the same thing around that engagement and then backwards and forwards with fans. It does get very hard at that scale, and there are so many things that you can't talk about, like you just said there, transfer rumors, injuries, the official football department stuff that you can't do too much on. It does make it very tough to be replying to everyone. Also, because of the scale of the amount of replies that are coming in, makes it very difficult.
Exactly. I know it's a big challenge for everybody. So we managed to, in these last 4 years, we went from 4 million to a little bit more than 150 million fans in total. Obviously, the total number doesn't really matter. What matters is how many people are active, how many people are converting. But that was the main goal. The goal that came from the board was we want to be the biggest on social media.
Yeah.
My goal was different. My goal was, I want to have more followers than anybody else, but it's not my first goal. My first goal was I wanted to give a quality service to the fans in all areas. That would be content, that would be customer support. I wanted to give them an amazing experience. And it was hard. I would like to think that we succeeded in doing that. You have to ask a normal fan to give you their opinion. But I think we've gone a long way. So Yeah, so we have a Facebook page, football, basketball, and academy, and the foundation, 4 in total. 4 Twitter accounts, and then 2 more, basketball and academy, and another one, foundation. And then we have a YouTube channel, Google Plus. We're also online. We're on Instagram. We're in China. So it has become like it changed dramatically. Like we're everywhere. We're almost everywhere.
So I wanted to go back to your bouncing around the departments because it's a very common occurrence to go. It's almost like, where does social and digital to a lesser extent fit? It's like you're an orphan child there for a little bit. Marketing had you, then comms, then IT, until you've effectively found a home in digital. But you're right. The digital is, and this was a really big discussion at SEAT in Miami with a few of the teams, is that digital you are serving many masters. So it's a real department that has to be agile enough to serve all those partners, but it's really horizontal across the organisation because you are serving ticketing, membership, customer service. You're serving commercial, and then you've also got the football, the team as well that you're serving. So it is something that you really can't just be sitting in one silo. You have to be constantly working with every single department to try to serve their purposes.
Like I hope that some CEOs listening now, like CEOs of football clubs, I think the solution is easy. People are making it look really difficult, and I've met a lot of people who work in social in football clubs in Spain, outside of Spain, and we do like therapy sessions. Like we talk about the same problems.
Yeah.
And they have the same problems. I think the solution is easy. It's about culture. The problem with football clubs is that they are the majority of especially the ones in Spain, because Real Madrid, Barcelona, Athletic Bilbao, and Atletico Madrid are not owned by somebody. They're owned by the fans. Yep. So by the club members. Sorry. So they are political organizations, and that makes things difficult. I think the key is to think of a football club like a startup. Right? The culture has to be, people have to be, they have to collaborate with each other, So the best example would be Apple. So Apple is a massive company, but it's basically the biggest startup on earth because they don't have committees. They don't have a digital committee. They don't have an iOS committee. They don't have, a hardware committee. Yep. Real Madrid, we have committees for each section of the business. All they have is they have one meeting a week for 3 hours to talk about everything. They have one guy in charge of iOS in engineering or software engineering in general, one guy in charge of hardware, one guy in charge of marketing. And they collaborate with each other, They don't they do give a service to each other, but they help each other provide that service, I'm not sure if you're getting my point.
Totally. I mean, it was pretty much. It's getting the whole team behind the idea of what digital can offer the whole team, and once that light bulb starts going off in all the different departments, then you can have that company wide thing, and it works much better if it does come from the top down. And at the moment, I agree with you. The therapy sessions, a lot of that is we've got social media evangelists or champions in there saying, this is what digital can offer, this is what we can do. And you've got to keep taking those small wins and get that sort of going through the whole organization. Then everyone starts understanding, well, that's why we're doing that on that platform, or that's why we're doing that on our website, because it's growing our brand and making everything better for everybody.
Yeah, and I think the main problem is that you have to make people in the other departments feel that they can contribute. So it would be wrong to say, okay, we have this digital department here, and it's going to do everything on its own, which is ridiculous because you can't do that. You need, for example, you need the communication guys to give you access to players. They need to approve the content. They need to tell you what you can do, what you can't do. They need to help you with their expertise and experience. Now, the marketing guys, you need them as well. So everybody needs each other. And the problem arises when each department says, okay, no, I'm going to do my job and I'm not going to help you.
Yep.
That's the problem. So I think the solution If I was in charge, if I ever be in charge, what I would do is that I would set everybody together and say, here we collaborate, we help each other. We don't have like a different department for digital. Digital is across the company, and we make it work. We listen to each other. We figure out the goals that we need to work on, and then we get stuff done.
Yeah.
And I hope somebody is listening and they make it happen, and then we see the result.
I hope people are listening as well. If you are listening, send us a tweet, either to myself, at Sean Callanan, at Adam Bader. Send us a tweet. Tell us what it is like in your club, in your team. I do joke occasionally that some of the role that I perform when working with clubs is effectively a digital divorce attorney. And help a digital marriage counselor almost between different departments, because they are pulling in different directions, but if we can get them going in the same direction, then you can get the results. And that's what I think digital is always what you've got to be looking to do, is to deliver for all those departments. Once you're starting helping someone hit their goals, hit their targets, get their returns, then they will keep coming back, and that's really important. I thought one of the key lessons from Oscar's talk at SEAT, he showed a pie graph of where the money comes in from us for sports teams, and how that graph hasn't changed that much over the years. And it was pretty much a pie graph split into almost 3 equal parts, where the money's coming in from TV, the money's coming in from tickets, and the money's coming in from sponsors. And then he had this tiny little sliver that said, "This is digital. This is where it's at." It's just at the beginning, and we've got to keep widening that pie and showing more returns in that space. And that's the challenge for all of us as digital evangelists inside the clubs, to keep showing those returns in those spaces.
I agree with Oscar, but I don't think that's very accurate, because when you look at tickets and sponsorship, how do you sell the tickets?
Yeah.
Now more people are buying the tickets online, so I would consider that digital. You know what I mean?
There is a bit of where does the, and I do joke about it, is a bit of where the attribution goes. Like, exactly. you sell a big sponsorship, and the sponsor is, drawn to Real Madrid because of the product on the field, all the people that play, but they go, 77 million Facebook fans, that's also a big draw, and a big component of that deal has digital in it. So that pie is growing. I think what Oscar was saying is, here it was traditionally, and it when he started, that sliver was small, and he's been able to open it up, and what you've been doing at Real Madrid is seeing that digital is getting more and more. But it's, traditionally, the money has come from TV tickets and sponsors. And so digital needs to show that it's helping those 3 areas and getting its piece of the pie.
Yeah, it is also unfair to compare, the revenue coming from TV, ticketing, and sponsorship to digital, because digital is still new. Mm-hmm. And because, people go to the stadium to see the games.
Yep.
They don't go to a website to see it. Well, this has been changing for the last 5-6 years, right? People are watching games online, but this is a new thing, even though it started happening a while ago, but it's still not old. So I don't think you should make the comparison. What you have to look at is that digital complements the rest of the sources.
Definitely.
It improves it. You know what I mean? You're still selling tickets, but people don't want to go to the stadium. They don't want to stand in line, and they don't want to buy the ticket there. They want to go to the website or on their phone, and they buy the ticket. So digital is basically making the channels or making the tools better, So my prediction, and I think Oscar talked about this in on your podcast, is that the TV rights are going to be bought by Apple, Amazon, Google, or somebody.
Yeah,
and it's going to be online. And you forget about, you forget about Media Pro, you forget about all of those guys. So when that happens, people are going to say, "Oh, everything is coming from digital."
Yeah. Well, and that's when you do look at the fact that all of your video from a Real Madrid point of view is going through YouTube, and the revenue that you're able to generate from that as a platform. Is something that, again, 5 years ago was a stream that didn't exist. And the option that they have, and we're already hearing Google talking about trying to tackle the NFL rights and things like that, and Apple is in the same space. That will definitely change that pie graph in the next 5 years. I want to go back and talk to you about a little bit about one of the things that I'm always talking with when I'm talking to the people is access to the players, how much you can get, and the limited opportunities. Now, when we're talking big social numbers, you've got players on your team that are dwarfing the numbers that you have for Real Madrid. Cristiano Ronaldo is the most liked man on Facebook, and he's only behind Shakira as far as Facebook fans, having 100 million. What's it like, engaging and working with those players, because effectively they're walking brands in their own right?
It's funny because when we started out, none of the players were on social media. There were some early adopters. I think the first was Cristiano, and then Kaká. Kaká was the first one to sign up for Twitter. Actually, he was the most popular football player on Twitter. And then Cristiano signed up, and then he beat him. Yep. And now he beat everybody. So the thing is, so the players, obviously, like when you say players, like we're talking about the people who work with the players,
yep.
Not just the players, because a guy like Cristiano, for example, his primary goal in life is to become the best football player. Mm-hmm. And he is focused on that. So he goes to training, he plays football, he goes home, and he recovers, and he repeats that. Okay? So things like digital, things like marketing and all of that, it's not something that he's focusing on. But because he has a great team behind him, they managed to set this up early on. He's not like, I don't remember exactly when he started on Twitter and Facebook, but he started before the majority of football players.
Yep.
And that was key because, as you said, they're like walking brands. They're not football players. They're brands, literally. So working with them was great because at the end of the day, when we think about it, Real Madrid doesn't only have 70 million Facebook fans. We have more if you include the fans that our players have. So, and this is like, sponsors noticed this, and they started asking the club to post stuff on the players' accounts. Obviously, mm-hmm. Somebody like Adidas wouldn't be able to do it with Ronaldo because he's with Nike.
Yep.
But if he was an Adidas player, like say Ramos, for example, that would be perfect. Or Bale. Bale is the best example. So in the recent shirt launch, the black one, the Champions League shirt, they activated the sponsorship online on the club's website, on our social media profiles, and also on the players' profiles. So it has become important that the players are on social media and that they are growing because it gives us more access. It drives more traffic. So we try to partner up with them. Sometimes it's difficult because they're not like focused on it. They're not like investing in it. So, but with the big ones, they have teams that handle their social media. Some of them use the platforms. So you would have somebody like Arbeloa, who is like a fanatic. Like he's a geek. He should be on this podcast.
Yep, I'll try to get him on.
Yeah, he's amazing. So he's somebody like he doesn't have a community manager. He does everything alone, and he provides amazing content because that's how it should be done. You shouldn't have a community manager. The players should be doing it. But it's because he loves it. Yep. He comes from a family that is, his three brothers are startup founders and they're investors. So it's like it runs in the family. They love technology, but he's not your ordinary players. The rest of the guys are like, looking at each other is like they're getting jealous. Oh, Cristiano has 100 million Facebook. I better start a page, and start growing that. So for the majority of the players, it's like an ego thing.
Yeah.
In the beginning, but then it become, oh my God, like I can get more money for sponsorship if I had 20 million fans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they got like more educated, and now everybody's, even like our youth players are on social media, especially Twitter. Twitter is very big in Spain.
Yep.
So you would have like a 16-year-old kid who plays for one of our youth teams, and it was like "Hey, Adam, can you verify my account?" I was like, "No, because you're not famous yet." You know what I mean?
But it is a balancing act there, where from a club point of view, you're helping the player build their profile, and you want to have that relationship where you're pushing something out and you want the player to promote it on their channels. And so as long as you have that good working relationship, hopefully with the player, and I agree, I think it works best when it is the player doing it and they're not outsourcing at all. But then, you want to have that relationship where you can say, when you're doing something, we can push it out, and when we're doing something, you can push it out. And it's, the fan connection with the athlete is, it's strange, but it's definitely stronger, directly with the athlete than even with the club, even with the passionate Madrid fans. The fan connection with a guy like Cristiano Ronaldo and guys like Bale is so close. And if they push out a message, the fans are all over it, retweeting it, posting it, liking it, all of the above.
It's more effective. It's way more effective.
And then the other side of it is not from the social side of it, but also from the content point of view. You were talking about getting that insider access. I'm assuming that exactly the same with all the clubs. Anytime that you're getting content with the players, whether it's shots at training or little short chats and video interviews pre and post training or games, that's the main driver from a website point of view. That's what gets the eyeballs. That's what gets people coming to the site.
Well, I mean, in terms of everybody would say, oh, okay, content is king and all of that, and I agree with that. Honestly, if you ask me which club is the best at creating content, I would pick Man City. I think they're phenomenal. But in terms of numbers, they're small. They're smaller than Barcelona and Real Madrid, and that's the problem because if you don't have a big brand, it's going to be hard to become the most followed club on social networks. So that was your goal. Mm-hmm. And this is a reason that, you take somebody like Katy Perry or somebody and she's bigger than Barcelona or Real Madrid on Facebook, when in reality, she's not as famous. And it's because of many reasons, because of demographics, because of the people who use Facebook, So what we did was that, what we noticed, what I personally noticed during the 4 years is that when we're playing well and we're winning titles, there's always a traffic spike, which is normal. Yep. And that's when we grow very quickly. That's where we make, the 2 million, 3 million fans in 1 month or in 2 months. There was a period where we were growing between 500,000 to 1 million a week on Facebook, on just one page. Yep. And it was because we won the Champions League final. The content helps you make the fans happy. Yep. But it doesn't necessarily help you grow. It does. I mean, I'm not saying that if you don't post great content, you're not going to grow. But in football, the trend that I noticed that if your team is not playing well, it's going to be hard to grow. And the trend that I noticed is that, which is really interesting and a little bit stupid, is that when the team loses, a lot of people unlike the page. And it was okay, what's going on here? Are you going to like it again when we win?
But that is the irrational passion of sports
exactly.
fans. I mean, you would have seen, you've seen, you've been behind a Facebook page or a Twitter account after a big win, and you've seen, the joy, just the rush of, digital love that comes your way, and then the same, you put up a post after a bad loss, in a big match, say against Barcelona, and you will get the same excuses that we get all around. They'll be like, if you didn't spend so much time using Twitter and Facebook, then we would have won. You get that irrational sports fan that just can't understand. They're the ones that unlike the page and complain and things like that. And that's part of the yin and yang of working in sports. The passion of the fans around those big events.
Yeah, I mean, it's really funny because I remember tweeting the Champions League final against Atletico Madrid, and we're losing 1-0 up to minute 92. And most of the tweets, as you can imagine, they're not nice. I can't even tell you what they said. And then Ramos scores minute 93. And the same people were like tweeting, "You're the best. You're like, you're the greatest club on earth." It's like 1 minute ago they were saying something different.
Yeah.
So obviously we know that, but it sometimes it affects your performance, like in terms of likes and unlikes. But if you're smart enough and you dig deep into the stats, you're going to understand that after a game that you lose, especially like if you lose 4 or 5-0 against one of your biggest rivals, you'll always have this negative reaction, like a lot of bad comments and a lot of unlikes. But then when you start winning, those people are going to come back,
definitely.
So,
and the other thing is also you do get those transient fans that like the page just for the opportunity to have a little bit of banter and annoy the Real Madrid fans. So you have that transition. So you really got to keep focused on your goals, which is traffic, engaging your fans, achieving your goals and what you're trying to do, and not too be fussed with those like numbers and follower numbers.
But I would say the only thing that you shouldn't do after defeat is promote a product. Never do that.
No.
And teams do that. It's like when I see it, like we never do that. I can't allow that because it's not effective. It doesn't work, and it's actually offensive to the fan. Yeah, and I just teams doing it.
Yeah, you've got to be flexible enough to go, feel the pulse of the fan base and know the reaction you're going to get, and be able to have the power as someone who's driving the social to say, I'm not going to put this out because it's only going to do damage to our brand, the sponsor's brand or whatever. Yeah, there's definitely times where sometimes less is more. And I really think in sports, you've got to give your fans the opportunity to vent and effectively grieve after a loss. You put up the post, let them grieve and have the, vent their spleen about it. But 3 days later or 7 days later, you're going to play again, and those fans will be up and about, optimistic, positive about the team. You've just got to let them go through that grieving process if they do go for a loss.
True.
So, want to quickly just before wrapping up the interview. So, what are your plans next? What do you want to do in post Real Madrid? Give us a little bit of insight on what you're looking to do.
So, my main idea was to work with players with their digital presence. I think what players should be doing now is looking into iOS games, Android games as well, like apps. Also, try to change the way they think about this, because the majority don't really see it as something fundamental.
Mm-hmm.
They see, okay, I got to be there. I got to have a Twitter account. I'm going to hire somebody to update it, and that's it. I think, the world is changing, like people think about you based on what you do online, what you say. And this applies to everybody, not just a football player, to normal people. So what I want to do is that I want to educate players and help them change their images online. And there is a lot of players who did this in a very smart way. One of them is Rooney, because Rooney had a bad image in England because of things that he did, really horrible things.
Yep.
And then he got on Twitter, and then he started showing his fans the other side of Rooney. The father, the guy who loves playing PS3, who loves horses, the dad and all of that. And people started connecting with him on a personal level. But what he did was that he invested in that. He took photos, he took videos, he used it.
Yep.
So I want the other players who are not doing that to understand that and see the value in it. So that's my main goal, like for now, to continue working in sports. But
I think you're right there. I see, I'm working on a few things with athletes as well, and you were talking before about when you started Real Madrid, and when I started Sports Geek back in 2010, about the opportunity that clubs had with these pretty much untapped social networks and digital platforms that they were building. I see athletes pretty much in that same space. There's a few that are doing it well, and you're using, Wayne Rooney as the example there, but there's so many out there that don't realise the asset that they've got, that's been handed to them, that they've grown these digital fan bases, but one, what could they do with them? And then also, what is the opportunity for them to frame their own story, present the version of them in the digital space, and that may turn out to different sponsorship deals, open up whole new markets for them, completely change perceptions, as you just described with the Wayne Rooney case. I think it's a massive opportunity for the smart, savvy athletes that understand, what it could offer them.
Yeah, definitely. But I think like when I talked to the other day, I was with the Real Madrid basketball player, and the only thing I told him was that, look, 10 years ago, or no, that's a long time ago.
Yep.
Maybe 7 years ago. Okay, before Facebook, before Twitter.
Yep.
How do players communicate with their fans? It would be through TV interviews, the press. It's not direct, right?
Yep.
And sometimes a newspaper would come up with an article and say player X cheated on his wife with this woman.
Exactly.
And the player doesn't have a way to react. And he would just go to another newspaper and try to deny that. Now, with a Facebook post, you can just destroy all of these rumors. CNN would take a screenshot of the post. It would put it on TV. The other network would do that. It would spread like fire.
Yeah,
and this happens.
You are your own media network now.
Exactly. You have the most powerful communication tool ever at their fingerprints.
Yep. One
Facebook post and you destroy everybody else because you're the source. So if they're not convinced after that, then there is a problem. Because they don't have to be convinced. It's the way it works now. Like when you have 100, you don't have to have 100 million people, right? You have to have a good fan base to be able to cause change. And there is an actor who is Oliver Queen, on Green Arrow.
Yes.
No, it's Stephen Amell.
Yeah, I know the guy. Yeah.
Yeah, that guy is amazing because if you go to his Facebook page, everything on that page is written by him. But you know what he does with his fans is that he uses his fan base to do good outside of Facebook. So he started a shirt campaign to fight cancer. Before that, he was helping a child. She was sick. She needed money to have a surgery. All of this charity work. Without his fan base, he wouldn't be able to do that easily.
Yeah.
And he was able to do it because he invested in that fan base. So footballers have to think about it in that way. When you invest in it, it becomes something extremely valuable that they can use after they retire, because the player's career is very short. It's like, if you're lucky, it's 15 years. If you're very lucky, what are you going to do afterwards?
Yeah. So a good example of that was recently NBA star Steve Nash, who's retired earlier this season with back troubles. He put up an Instagram photo a couple of weeks ago of him playing golf, and he got a whole bunch of people saying, "Why aren't you playing? You should be playing if you're playing golf." And he went onto his Facebook page and wrote a really heartfelt letter of how much recovery and rehabilitation he'd done, and what an NBA game does to him, and how he's affected every time, and it's just not the same. And he just put that on his Facebook feed, and it gave his point of view. He's his own media channel, and then it was picked up by all the media outlets. It was run on ESPN, and they just took his Facebook post. He didn't have to, in the old style, go to a journalist and have an interview. He had the opportunity to push it out his own, with his own channel, and that's what it offers from an athlete point of view.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I want to try to do. But in the long term, I'm moving. I want to move to the U.S. So it's like I'm not really sure about how I'm going to do this, but my main goal is to move to the U.S., work in the tech industry, because it's my passion. I love football, but I've done everything I wanted. I worked at my favorite club, and now it's time to do something new. And I'm very passionate about technology and space exploration. So if there's anybody listening to this podcast who's an expert on space exploration, please talk to me.
Well, it just recently we just landed landed a spaceship on a comet. So things that were science fiction movies are now becoming reality. So, anything's possible these days.
Yeah, I mean, it's something, Sean, like the thing with space, like for the last 2 years, whenever I go with friends or like, people that I work with, is like, okay, what do you want to do in the future? Is like space exploration. And they don't take me seriously. They laugh. It was like, seriously? Like, are you still like thinking about becoming an astronaut? You're not 5 years old. And I was like, I mean, it is what makes me excited, because it's an area that people feel intimidated by. And it's a very important area. It's extremely important. So one issue, and please let me say this on the podcast, because I'm like, I want to raise their awareness about this issue, is the asteroids issue. So there is a foundation that I'm going to collaborate with. It's called Sentinel Mission. And basically what they're going to do is that they're going to launch a spacecraft around the sun that is going to detect all the asteroids, the dangerous asteroids in the solar system, and it's going to give us a chance to be able to deflect or destroy these asteroids before they hit us. Because if an asteroid hits Earth, it's going to cause a lot of damage. Yep. It might also lead to extinction. So, as you said earlier, it's not science fiction anymore. Like last year, a very small asteroid that burned up in the atmosphere hit Russia, and it caused a lot of damage. So yeah, that's what I'm passionate about. It's nothing like football.
Well, I'll have to introduce you to my mate Raul Oeda. He's put a Lego spaceship into space, and he was also behind the Lego car that we launched last year. His mission is to build a spaceship. So I think I should connect you two together and see what you guys come up with.
Yeah, maybe we'll come up with that spaceship. Who knows?
All right. Adam, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Where can people find you on the internet to connect with you?
Sure, you can find me on Twitter at Adam Bader, and I have a website where you can find links to other sites on the web where I am active. So it's adambader.com. I'm LinkedIn, I'm on Medium, I'm on Quora, I'm everybody. I love social, so I'm on all platforms.
All right. Well, I'll put links to all of your sites. Might make for a long post once I've connected all the Real Madrid platforms and yourself. It will make for long show notes, but those will be in the show notes for this episode. Adam, thank you very much for coming on the podcast, and hopefully we can catch up either next time I'm in Europe or next time we maybe catch up in the US.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. It's been wonderful.
Go to sportsgeekhq.com for more sports digital marketing resources.
Thanks again to Adam Bader there. Send him a tweet, tell him that you listened to the interview. He's at Adam Bader, Bader. Very much appreciative of catching up with him. I know this has been a long podcast, and I do my best to keep it under the hour mark, so I'm going to wrap up this podcast pretty quickly. But yeah, I want your take on the Adam interview. Very similar story to a lot of people who get into the world of sports digital, coming from that fan persona, being a fan, producing content for a team, that journalist first sort of background. But I think the key takeaway for me, and for the people who are looking to break into the world of sports business, it's use the platforms. Or as I said at Entrepreneur Club, use the bloody platforms. And that's what Adam was doing. So I think the opportunity is to use the new platforms. So as the skills develop in things like Facebook and Twitter and those kind of things, teams will still be looking for people who can use the newer platforms most effectively. So you're looking at Vine and Snapchat and Cyberdust and even regional-based ones like Line and things like that as teams try to push into Asia and things like that. So, you look at the San Francisco 40 Viners. They've got a team that do specific videos for Vine. So be the expert or be the person that uses that platform in your own life. Know all the angles. It's a really good way to get in. I'm going to wrap up this episode. Just a quick call to action. The planning for SEAT 2014 is going really well, as is my planned trip prior to SEAT, going to Seattle and catching up with friends in Seattle, the Seahawks and the Sounders, and catching a Mariners game, and then also jumping up to Portland to catch up with the Trailblazers and the Timbers before heading to San Francisco and catching a game before SEAT kicks off. So please send me an email, Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. If you're in Australia or New Zealand and want to come along, I'd love to have a few more people on that trip and getting a few more people going to SEAT. That clock is telling me to wrap up this show. You can get the show notes at sportsgeekhq.com/70, and you can check out the refreshed Sports Geek podcast homepage, sportsgeekhq.com/SGP. It shows you all the ways to subscribe and leave reviews and the like. I'm actually getting DJ Joel to do some new voiceovers, but what I want to include you, my listeners, in that. So send me a voice testimonial, but not really a shout out, something for the bumpers. Just record it on your phone and send it to me, something along the lines of, I'm Sean Callanan from Sports Geek and you're listening to the Sports Geek podcast. But obviously insert your name and insert your team and what you do. I'd love to include more of the listeners and the people who have been on the show. So if you've been a guest, you're going to get hit up with an email to ask for that kind of audio as I try to reach 100 iTunes reviews before the end of the year. The sounds of the game this week, because I had Adam on the show, it is some audio from my time from when I did see Real Madrid, and it's actually when they're doing the Mexican wave, but I guess it might be the Spanish wave.
Check out which teams work with Sports Geek at sportsgeekhq.com/clients. Find all Sports Geek podcasts at sportsgeekhq.com/SGP. Send in your sounds of the game. Email Sean at sportsgeekhq.com. Thanks for listening to the Sports Geek Podcast.